Welcome. We are so excited to have you with us today for the kickoff of the Amaxra Tech Talk series. This is the first of many brief 20 to 30-minute conversations around important ideas and tools in technology today. We are looking forward to developing a great community for our clients and potential clients to learn more about the technology that they use every day. My name is Thane Belknap, and I'm a project manager here at Amaxra. I work with many of our clients directly on technology implementation projects and have the pleasure of kicking off our first Tech Talk. So let's get started. Today, we're going to be talking about the current state of security and one of the best ways to prevent attacks on your system. Cybercrime is up across the board. In the last 5 years, we have seen a 67% increase in security breaches. Those breaches result in an average of $4 million lost to business disruption and almost $6 million in information loss. You can see on the graph on the right side that in all categories, we are seeing year-over-year increases in cost of cybercrime. Between 2018 and 2019, there has been an 11% increase in breaches. This percentage continues to grow each year. It leaves a lot of our clients asking, well, does this really affect me though? I'm a small business. I'm not worth hacking. Unfortunately, the truth isn't quite that true. 58% of all cyber attacks will happen to businesses with fewer than 250 employees. It may seem counterproductive that an attacker would go after a small business instead of a large corporate organization where the payoff would be much bigger. The reason behind this, though, is that larger organizations are increasing spending on cybersecurity, making it harder for an attacker to perform a successful attack. Small and medium-sized businesses, on the other hand, rarely have the resources to dedicate to IT security, and it becomes somewhat of an afterthought. This leaves those businesses open and primed for an attack. 60% of small businesses go out of business after a major cyber attack happens. So we know that cybersecurity is important, and we know as a small and medium-sized business, it affects us. But a lot of businesses are left asking, well, what can we do now with the limited resources that we have for IT? The answer? Multi-factor authentication. Per Microsoft, it is 99.9% effective at stopping an attack. It is most likely included in the Office licensing you already buy, and it's a simple implementation. But most importantly, the number one thing recommended by security professionals as the most important thing you can do to protect your organization today is to enable multi-factor authentication. So what exactly is multi-factor authentication? You know, it's a keyword that a lot of us hear. It gets thrown around a lot these days. But what exactly is it? Multi-factor authentication is an authentication method in which a computer user is granted access only after successfully presenting 2 or more pieces of evidence or factors to the authentication mechanism. Knowledge, or something that the user knows. Possession, or something that the user has. And inherent, or something the user and only the user is. So this is the technical definition. But what exactly does that all come down to? The different factors of authentication, and the easiest way to boil this down, is that multi-factor authentication requires a minimum of 2 factors to be able to sign into an account. So typically, it's what a user knows, which would be your username and password, and then what a user has, which would be a code that's been texted to you, an app approval, or what a user is, which would be a biometric, something like facial recognition or fingerprint identification. On the right, we see a screenshot of what I see when I sign into my Amaxra account. I've entered my username and my login information, and now I'm being prompted to approve the sign-in request. This request has sent an app notification to my phone where I'm able to accept that and approve the sign-in. If I'm not trying to sign into an account, I can quickly deny it, and I know that someone's trying to gain access to my account. So how do we enable multi-factor authentication in Office 365? Let's go take a look at a demo. So we've signed in, and we're now in the portal.office.com, and we're ready to get started. So not all users have this view. The admin center is only available to users who are administrators in your account. In this particular account, we are an administrator, and so we're going to go ahead and click on that admin button. This opens up a second page. On this page, we're now looking at the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So this is the typical view that you would see as you enter the Admin Center. We do have the new user interface turned on, so your Admin Center may not look exactly like this, or the last time you signed in, it may not have looked like this. But on the left-hand side, let's go ahead and go to Users, and then Active Users. We're now seeing the list of all of our active users here. So now we have all of our users, and typically we're familiar with clicking on a user and all of their details and all of the things that are important to their account are normally in this box. So across the top here, you have their accounts, their devices, their licensing and apps. You can control mail and OneDrive. Unfortunately, at this stage, multi-factor authentication isn't available in this view. So we're going to click out of the user view. Because we still have a user selected, we need to unselect that user. So when we start to enable multi-factor authentication, we need to make sure that no users have been selected. Now, typically, the multi-factor authentication option is found across this top bar here in this general area. If you're on a smaller screen, like we are today, you may have to click the ellipses, and then you'll see the multi-factor authentication drop-down. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. This now opens up a third tab for us. So this tab is now going to be the multi-factor authentication tab. And here, again, we see a list of all of our users. We can see on the right side of our list here that all of our users are in the disabled status. The benefit to this is that multi-factor authentication doesn't have to be turned on for all of your users. You can select the group of users that you want to enable multi-factor authentication for. The benefit to this is that you might enable it for only your global administrators, or you might enable it for everyone in the organization, or you can roll it out to a small test group before you get started. It makes it a lot more flexible, and it's really nice to be able to use it that way. Let's go over though, and we're going to enable for Adele. So we're going to click the box next to Adele here, and down on the right-hand side, we see that we can enable her. So we're going to click on that. We get this pop-up now, and we have a couple of links. So the first one is the deployment guide. This is a great guide from Microsoft that gives details and instructions for deploying. The second is the MFA setup. So this is for your users who don't regularly sign in through the browser. We've already done all of this, and we're ready to roll this out. So we're going to go ahead and enable multi-factor authentication for Adele. We now see that we're successful. So this is great. Multi-factor authentication has been enabled for Adele, and we can close our window. Now, if we look at our left-hand column here, we see that Adele is marked as enabled. There is one more option, though, and this option would be that we can enforce. So you've got three different statuses: enabled, which we have right now, disabled, which we see below, and then if we click on Adele, and we come back to the right side, we see that we have the options to move her back to disabled, but we also have an option to move her to enforced. And the primary difference here is that as an enabled user, the next time Adele signs in online, she'll be prompted to complete the multi-factor authentication process. If we were to enforce Adele, that means that the next time Adele tries to get to any of her information, she's going to need to complete the multi-factor authentication process first. So let's do that for Adele. We're going to enforce multi-factor authentication here. So we get this pop-up. We're going to select enforce, and now we see that this has been completed and her account is now enforced. So with all of that, we can now see that Adele is marked as an enforced status. The rest of our users are still disabled, which means that we don't have to worry about engaging them. They don't have to worry about any of this. We're simply testing this out with Adele for the time being. As we move forward with Adele, something to note is that she is going to have to sign in and complete the multi-factor authentication process now before she's able to access any of her information. What that means is that it's something to keep in mind that if you're going to enforce your user, you want to make sure that they're not out traveling and that they're going to have time to complete that enrollment before that they need access to that information. But in this case, let's go ahead and switch, and we're going to take a look at what the user sees now the first time that they sign into their account after multi-factor has been turned on. And so here we can see that, that we have Adele's sign in. So we're at portal.office.com, and Adele has been signed in. So Adele has gone to portal.office.com. She's ready to sign in. And so as she gets ready to sign in, she enters her normal credentials, her email and her password. Once she completes her password, we now see a pop-up that says more information is required. Your organization needs more information to keep your account secure. So we go and we click on next. We're now prompted with the additional security verification page. And so by default, up here at the top, we're going to see that authentication phone is what's there. That's the most common way that people use multi-factor authentication. And what this means is that when we sign in, a text is going to be sent to our phone, and we're going to enter that information into the login credentials. There's another option, though, to use a mobile app. And this is actually the one that we typically recommend. There are two options within the mobile app. So you have the option to receive notifications for verification and to use a verification code. And what that means is that if you opt to receive notifications for verification, when you sign in, your app will then be prompted with an approve or deny request. If you choose to use a verification code, the app will pre-generate a number that'll change every 30 seconds, and you have to take that number and enter it in order to sign in. In most cases, I like to use the receive notifications for verification. I think it's a lot easier, and it actually pushes that notification to my Apple Watch, where I'm able to approve quickly and easily from my Apple Watch and move on with my login process. So let's go ahead and select that in this case. And now we're going to click on Setup. So we're configuring the mobile app. This is a two-piece part. We need to go and download the Microsoft Authenticator app onto our Android or iOS device. From there, we'll open the app, add a new account, and then we're going to scan this QR code, and the app will take care of the rest of it. So we've done that, and we're going to click Next. It's now checking the activation status. So as it goes through this, it's going to make sure that we've completed this step with the app and that we have correctly connected our accounts. It's an important step, and it's an easy one to get your users a little bit confused on as they have to go through that process of downloading the app. But we can see here that our mobile app has been configured, notifications and verification codes are ready. So we're going to click Next. It's now sent us a notification for us to approve on our device. This is just a test to make sure that everything has connected properly. Once it completes that, it moves on to this additional security verification phase. This is just in case we lose access to the mobile app. It's asking us to enter a mobile phone number here that they can still reach us at. So we're going to enter the Amaxra main line. And then once that's completed, we can come over and we can select Next. This brings us to one of the most important steps of the multi-factor authentication process. This is what's known as the app password. So for applications that aren't capable of doing the multi-factor authentication sign-in process, you're going to need what's called an app password. Most commonly, this is going to be your iOS and Android default mail application. They're not capable of doing the last step to get that multi-factor approved. So if you try and sign in with your normal username and password, what you're going to find is that it's never going to sign in. It's going to tell you that it's the wrong credential, and that what you actually need is one of these app passwords. So this password here, you'll see one time. In this screen is the only time that you'll ever see this password. Once we click Done, we've moved on. Not to worry though, you can create and generate multiple of these passwords, and it's fairly easy and simple. You can create up to 40 of them before you have to move on. So it's definitely not something that's critically important, but it is something to keep in mind that if you're ever trying to sign in and for some reason it's telling you that your username and password is incorrect, a lot of times it's because it's actually seeking one of these application passwords. And so you'll just either need to have one available or you'll need to sign in and go back to your additional security verifications area where you can create another one. So we've used it and we're good, so we're done. We're going to go ahead and select done then, and we now see that we continue on to the rest of the Microsoft Office 365 sign-in experience that we would normally see when we sign in with our username and password. From here, we're going to come into portal.office.com, and we can continue on with what we're doing. Going forward, this user will always get a notification now when they try and sign in. So anytime they're trying to sign in online, their phone will be prompted with an approve or deny request. Makes it a lot more secure. It's even more secure than the SMS method because it's secured over the Microsoft Authenticator app. So it's a great tool and a great resource, and definitely one of the ones that we recommend. We actually had a case where a client was saying, you know, multi-factor is great, except for the fact that I have to walk outside of our office because I don't get cell phone service in here. And so we were actually able to show them how to use the multi-factor authentication app because that runs over Wi-Fi. And so over Wi-Fi, they didn't have to leave the office anymore to get that approval code. So we'll go ahead and switch back to our deck here. We've covered a